We'll get started. Hi, my name is Ian Burkhart. I'm the current president of the North American SCI Consortium. And today we want to thank you for joining us for our SCI Connections webinar that we hold these quarterly. Our topic today is recent findings and highlights from the PVA and ASCIP conferences, so the Paralyzed Veterans America and Academy of Spinal Cord Injury Professionals. To kick us off, I'm going to hand it over to Jared, our vice president, who attended both conferences and is able to give a report. We please ask that everyone mute your microphones. And if you have questions, please add them into the chat. And then at the end, we will get to a Q&A for everyone to speak. Thanks so much. Jared, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Feel free to come off of camera and or come on camera and be with us as you make your way into the meeting and settle in. So a couple of ways, preparing this talk, and I always, every time I get a chance to speak in front of people within our community, it's like a privilege. I get a little anxious. I get a little excited. I get a little, I want to do a good job for you, because you have transformed my life, and you've given me different ways to mode through my life. So there's a couple ways to listen to this talk. There's one is to be critical, right? To be, to notice what I'm saying that's not right. I'm going to do my best to give you what I got out of the conferences, and by no means is it going to be an exhaustive list, and by no means is it going to be possibly even accurate in some cases. And I'm here to hear all the criticism for sure, and I welcome your feedback. But I encourage you to listen. Anything that has occurred newly in reality, which is what we're up to here, required listening. It required getting how things truly are currently, the current state of affairs, and then building from there. And so I invite you to listen. All right. So a little bit about NASCIC, in case you're not familiar. We were born out of a meeting that was held in 2016 at a Praxis meeting. And it was all of these wonderful people who were there and began the process of realizing that there was a gap that needed filled in our community. And that was that our lived experience, people living with paralysis, our voices were not always being inserted into research, into new product development, into care, and into policy. And so out of that was born NASCIC in 2017. And we work collaboratively, the key word being collaboratively, with all stakeholders in our community, the spinal cord injury community, to bring about unified care, cure, and policy change. So that's a little bit about what we're up to here in this organization. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the PVA Summit and the ASCIP conference. I can't stand acronyms myself. PVA stands for Paralyzed Veterans of America, and ASCIP stands for the Academy of Spinal Cord Injury Professionals. So you can kind of gather what that might be about. We're going to talk a little bit about what we got out of it, those of us who came, and then we're going to also talk about what's next and how NASCIC sees our role in all of this world of research. So I kind of just basically brief through it. I got a lot of slides to get through. So if I skip through something that catches your eye and you want to know more about it, there'll be time at the end, or if something comes to you later, you can also reach out to Gabby, and there'll be her contact information will be in the chat, as well as on one of the slides towards the end. You feel free to reach out to her and to any one of us here at NASCIC, and we'll get back to you. So a little bit about the PVA and ASCIP. They're very similar in nature. Obviously, the Paralyzed Veterans of America's conference is focused on veterans and how we can make their lives better, improve the quality of the lives of people who are living with ALS, MS, as well as spinal cord injury. So I'm going to be focused mainly on spinal cord injury in this talk and what I gleaned out of that. And with ASCIP, there's a focus on research and the quality of life for people living with a spinal cord injury. But both conferences really go into research. They've been similar funding arms, including the Department of Defense, um, as well as Nielsen. Nielsen is a huge proponent for financial aid for spinal cord injury research, as well as all the quality of life that gets transformed to make all of our lives better. In fact, I would venture to say that everyone in the United States, for sure, and possibly all of North America, who has been through the healthcare system um, and is now living with a spinal cord injury has benefited somewhere along the way from Nielsen. The Nielsen Foundation has done an incredible job getting out grants to underserved communities. I learned this last month. I'm part of United Spinal of Tennessee here in Nashville, and we got a grant from Nielsen over the last month to help aid for an equipment closet for wheelchair parts to help aid people who come out of the hospital newly injured with no insurance and no way to pay to have a wheelchair. I mean, this is something that I didn't even realize the severity of it until we had already had proposed this grant, and it just really was moving for me. I attended a gala the following day when I got back from this conference, and there was the Vanderbilt professionals that were there, and we started to collaborate on how we can make this something that shows up in reality. Which brings me to another point of why we go to these conferences and what we're doing here. Before I get into that, this is a little bit about the highlights and some of the things I'm going to get into. But you know, we oftentimes we get out there and we get out into the world to connect with other like-minded people. And we do that so that we can start to form relationships and build communication and build capacity of what is wanted and needed in our community so that we can take that information back to our community and attempt to relay that and continue to see what's wanted and needed and build programs on top of that. So it's amazing how you go to these conferences, you get it opens your mind to so much of the need. It can be overwhelming. It's a bit like drinking from a fire hose, but you take back what you can and you share where you can, and we're all doing this together. And I can't stress that enough. That each one of us, each one of you, talking to you, either listening to this recording or here present, you make a difference. What you're up to in the world makes a difference. You just showing up when you enter a room, coming with what you know about spinal cord injury. You're the person who has the most knowledge, more than likely, in the room. Unless you're with somebody else with a spinal cord injury, you're probably it. So it's up to us to speak up and to share what life is like, and being open. All right. So some of the conference highlights, I'm just gonna touch on all this stuff because I could easily talk for ad nauseum about each one of them. Um, to give you an idea how many lectures there are at these conferences, there was over 50 between the two of them, and you would have four of them going on at the same time. So imagine trying to gather all that information, right? It's a little intimidating to say the least, and we did the best we could. So some of the main, try to compose these into subject matter. So there's nutrition, exercise, body composition, and how your body changes after a spinal cord injury, rehabilitation, something we're all familiar with, respiratory management, something I'm completely in the dark about. I'm a T10 para, so I had very little exposure to the respiratory world, and my eyes were opened at the PVA this year. Bowel and bladder, something that we all struggle with, or at the very least have struggled with, and is always top at the list of most important things when it comes to quality of life. And then insurance and employment. I thought that was an interesting topic. If you're a doctor, you know how to take a stand for your patients who can't stand, to keep that sort of analogy going, but how to really be for your patients, and going from this peer to peer to get things approved of. Caregiving and mindfulness is another one that I think gets a lot of attention and needs more attention. I probably won't be spending a whole lot of time on that. There's some great information out there. And artificial intelligence is a hot topic that I think everyone is interested in, and how we're going to use it or attempt to corral it and use it appropriately. And then, of course, accessibility is always one of the things that's at the top of everyone's list. So the first one is I'm just going to talk a little bit about is nutrition. And I wasn't able to attend Alicia's talk, but I did get in touch with Gary, and there was quite a bit of interesting information about his. One of them was about how the energy consumption that we take in after a spinal cord injury. We don't need as much energy. You may have already heard this before. There was a study I listened to a couple years ago that said we only need about 60% of the calories of an able-bodied person. Gary corrected me and said he's about plus or minus 72%. Um, but the interest and what that energy consumption looks like, you could say goes into the quality of foods. Some of this stuff is just really obvious research, in my opinion, stuff that we all know as a someone who's able-bodied. Like, you eat low density energy foods like whole grains or vegetables, that kind of thing, versus, cupcakes and high density energy foods. The way I look at it, and also portion control, eating smaller portions. So it turns out like your stomach, if you give it smaller portions and give it that couple hours in between meals, your stomach shrinks over time. Takes a while. It takes weeks, months. It'll shrink, and there's sensors in your stomach. So when the food gets to that sensor, it'll notify your brain that it's full. So one way to help to reduce the amount of energy we're consuming is to have our brain be notified that it's full. So it's satiated. So the study looked at psychological cues to fullness as well as uh, co physiological cues from the actual body. So you're drinking lots of water, staying hydrated. Um, there was also, I didn't cover this in one of my slides, but there was one on dentistry. If you have dry mouth, that's actually a cause of a lot of diseases and whatnot. Like you run certain risks with dry mouth due to, from my understanding, is like the bacteria and all the different things that's signaling. So you definitely want to stay hydrated, and a lot of our medicines, um, cause dehydration, cause our mouths to be dry. And one of the reasons we get into not pressure sores, but UTIs with your bladder, having urinary tract infections. One of the ways to combat that is to stay good and hydrated, staying good and flushed. And one signal to that would be dry mouth. Um, and that can occur also. There was a whole thing on that around sleep. I didn't get into that either in all of these slides, but one of them was on sleep apnea and its effects on your health. If you're not sleeping well, it tends to weaken the system. There's so many things that go along with just being human. There's all these different systems at play, and one system affects the other. It's like a wheel, this balancing act that we're constantly in motion. Ian and I were talking about this yesterday. Everything is going fine, and our minds are focused on what we're creating, how to make life better for other people, what the next thing is that we have to do. And then, boom, something out of nowhere happens. Maybe we get a bad night's sleep, which then causes us to our balance to be off, or our bowels go off. And then all of a sudden it upsets the whole thing. Next thing you know, we got a pressure sore and we're in the hospital for a couple of months. So everything counts. It's important to accentuate. We don't get paranoid necessarily about it once we found a certain balance, but everything counts. So looking at trying to add a little bit more value to your life as you go about your day and as your weeks and your months, it's really critical. It's important. It makes you a more solid, well-rounded human being to be of service to others. Even if it's just maybe not getting so snippy with the caregiver. Might be able to keep them a little bit longer, that kind of thing. And vice versa for the caregivers, right? If they're in good working order and taking care of themselves, then perhaps they'll be less likely to more prone to be of service to the people they're serving and being able to take their stuff and deal with their stuff on their time. Well, anyway, I'm kind of, as you can tell, I'm going to be getting off topic based on my slides, but another one that I looked at was yoga. Okay, so Katie White did a phenomenal job, I thought, with yoga. I mean, the takeaway here was keep moving. Keep it moving. it's easier to keep it moving if you're with the community. If you're with the community, uh, you see them doing it, you're like, all right, I can do it. If you sometimes we got different problems with our bodies and we think we look silly, leave all that at the door. Just keep it moving. And if you can't find a place to go to, or you have issues with your transportation, there's a lot of great stuff on Zoom that you can participate in courses. And at the end of the day, if you do it on your own and you want to go solo, that's fine too. But do what you can when you can. Every little bit helps. And they did this. The next one was about this home-based therapy study that they did, which I would say is probably obvious to our community, but maybe not. And that's that, electrical stimulation in alignment with exercise and therapy has statistically been shown now to help with your health and well-being. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer. If keeping it moving is works in the health realm, then electrical stimulation is going to be part of supporting your body and movement. All right, so body composition, talked a little bit about that already. Rehabilitation, hierarchy, sort of what I was alluding to with the wheel. When you were in the hospital, it's like inpatient, the only thing you're thinking about is, well, I don't know what you're thinking about. I know what I was thinking about. Overwhelm. Too much to manage, too little time to do it. I think if we all took a page out of our playbook from when we were inpatient and we looked at where we're at now, we'd be absolutely moved and impressed by who we are in the world. I mean, think about everything that you've mastered already. Our community is a master at many things that it's just the water we swim in goes unnoticed. One of those things is asking for help, asking for support without any loss of power. Now, we don't do that perfectly all the time, but you have the skill set to say, hey, I need someone to help change my bed, my diaper, where it depends, right? Whatever it is that I might need support with that for the average person would be such an upset and a problem, like if they had to. I was sharing about how I'm going in for my first colonoscopy, and a couple of people I raised a few eyebrows, like too much information. I'm like, I get it. It's too much information for some people, but the world that we live in, like, it's very little. It's too much information, and I look at that as a skill that you have. And even if you don't have a spinal cord injury and you're part of our community, you've been there for all of this. You know what this is like. And you can speak to that without making it an upset for people. So as we traverse through and if you're not there yet, that's totally fine and totally cool too. Like this is a process of self-discovery, self-awareness, and health and wellness and getting your needs met, getting your body taken care of, getting your head taken care of. And so this went into the hierarchy of needs in those different steps. And depending on where we fall, and we can all fall anywhere along this trajectory on any given day. But the highest level is community integration and lifelong wellness. And that's what we're about here at NASCIC. We're about getting people to that point so that we can give back to those who need the help who are further down on this list, maybe because they're still starting out or because they've had to deal with a new tragedy in their lives. All right, now in terms of respiratory management, I didn't know anything about this, like diaphragm pacing. So there was a great talk about diaphragm pacing and colostomy integration. I'm going to botch the combination of the two of these. um, but in the long story short of this, like diaphragm pacing, they like go in with these little electrodes into your lungs and they electrocute them, kind of like jump starting a battery in a car. So they've been able to get your lungs to move, and they've been able to do this at over a 70% success rate. The earlier, the better. So this has really helped a lot of people get off of a respirator. When my understanding is brutal. I mean, just having talks and preparing this talk, I learned about that. Oh, I almost forgot, as an aside, thank you, Patricia and Gabby, for helping me put these together, really putting it all together. You guys did phenomenal work, and I can't thank you enough. And then in terms of the integration between the two of these, I'm not exactly sure how the colostomy bag and the diaphragm pacing. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but if you go onto Google and you go into deep search AI mode and you type in Dr. Raymond Anders and his research with diaphragm pacing and colostomy integration, you're going to get a big picture of how that works. You're going to get some resources. In fact, I encourage everyone to do that with any of these topics to dive deeper. Um, all right. Bowel and bladder. Okay, so yeah, Elizabeth did a great job. I asked her about 50 questions after this, and she handled them, with grace. And basically, this one was at the Burke. If you go to burke.org, we'll put that in the chat. And also, they have a YouTube channel. And basically, how this was about was, all right, bowel is obviously a big concern with people with spinal cord injury. When they get out of the hospital, we kind of just let them go and say, figure it out. I know I had to pay a nurse $100 every time, every 2 days to come in and do my bowel program for me. That's not cheap, and I'm kind of cheap. So I wanted to get done with him as quickly as possible, probably prematurely. But one of the things they stressed here was they give educational videos. They had follow-up calls and support so people could feel comfortable calling and asking for help, support, learning how to do this on their own or with a caregiver, and then training their caregivers. A lot of what we do is training the people around us. Sometimes we forget that we're training people how to talk to us all the time. We let them know what's okay to say and what's not okay, just through our presence and the way we be with them. So something to be mindful of is like, how can I start retraining my own brain so that I can train others around me? Let's see here. So let's see, that was bowel and bladder. How we doing on time? Oh, doing pretty good. All right. Insurance and employment. Okay, so probably all know about vocational resources. If you're not, take a look at those in your local state. They're state specific, so there's great resources in some states, and they tend to gravitate towards specific cities in those states, and then some states are lacking, and they rely a lot on funding from other outside agents other than the state. Um, Peer-to-peer discussions with insurance companies. I thought this was interesting. They were talking about going to bat with your insurance company. If I have to listen to one more doctor tell me that you can't get a wheelchair till 5 years, because Medicare, says you can only get one every 5 years. First of all, that's not true. I've gotten a new wheelchair every 3 years. Now, the going rate is they're going to deny your claim. That's true. They are going to deny your claim. But it's up to you and your doctor to write in why you need a new wheelchair. Now, obviously, if you just want a new one because yours has scratches on it, that's not going to fly. But, I've broken a hip, I fractured a femur, my posture was off, I was falling out of the chair more than often. There are reasons to get a new wheelchair, and it takes a good doctor, a doctor who's willing to fight for you. And oftentimes, they're not willing to fight for you, not because they're not good people. It's just that they have a lot. There's a lot for them to manage. They're trying to see 20 patients a day or 10 patients a day, and they can get bogged down with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit in like caregiver burnout is also doctor burnout, empathy burnout. They talked about that. You know, Doctors have to learn to, and not just doctors, but nurses and caregivers, anyone in the healthcare profession and dealing with us, I would assert us, we're a lot. We're a lot for ourselves, but we've managed to get to a level of integrity with ourselves. What's okay? We'd spend a lot of time, I would say, pacifying other people, calming them down, getting them to say, hey, this is what we need to do next, kind of a mentality. And so a lot of people in the service industry, in the healthcare industry, get burnt out because they take on the emotions of others, and they take on uh, feeling inadequate because they can't help. And so sometimes they'll try to help too much and they get burned out, or they don't help, they retreat because that's their way of protecting themselves. So this is not an attack by any means on doctors who have to do these peer-to-peer discussions, but peer-to-peer discussion is when one doctor calls the insurance company to fight for what you need to another doctor with the insurance company. So it's a battle, it's a process, but we can win the equipment that we need. So keep up that fight. That was the takeaway from that one. All right. So again, Denise Fife is amazing. I don't know if she's here. She's just a phenomenal spokesperson for everything caregiver related, spinal cord injury related. Can't say enough about her and her organization. And they have a course. Uh, is it Kessler, Ian? John, yeah, Kessler organization. And they have a wonderful course for dealing with um, caregiver burnout and just the whole world of uh, family needs and an abundance of resources. So if you're in need right there, and that's a big thing in our community, check her out. Check out their website. Again, trauma-informed leadership. That was also, in that same vein I was speaking toward in terms of, uh, getting burned out. And then of course, mindfulness, being present. Okay, artificial intelligence. So this has been a hot topic, and the research world was clearly not all on the same page when it comes to artificial intelligence. Some people have use it, some people don't. And if you talk to someone who's deep into the world of artificial intelligence, they'll tell you that a large language model is not the same as artificial intelligence. So using something like ChatGPT or something, that's a large language model. That's a predictive element, and it's based on the information that it's been fed, predicting the next possible future outcome, most likely future outcome. And so it's prone to make mistakes. Um, Different than AGI, something that actually, artificial general intelligence, something that actually thinks. It takes the information and comes up with new conclusions drawn from the information, not something that's predictable, but a whole new thing. Some would say we're there, others would say we're not there. I don't know that we have access to that yet as a community. But in the realm of large language models, what has been noted is there's a lot of programs that are attempting to utilize that to make our lives better. And at the through the Nielsen Foundation, I'm sure, but at Utah, their rehabilitation center, putting they're putting smart technology into their inpatient rooms, and they're setting it up so there's all these different things that you can draw from to practice before you go home. And then they say, okay, which one of these things really made a difference for you? And then they take that information in those devices and they try to map that into your home. Pretty remarkable what they're attempting to do. Um, so there was a whole talk on that. And then they talked about some pitfalls of AI, which so when they're in the research world, the general consensus is don't use AI. But when they did a silent survey, an anonymous survey, they found that probably 80% of people, 85% of people are using AI. So the reality of it is that they came up with some pretty strict guidelines that I think it was Nature Journal had put out. Um, but basically, if you use AI for anything other than grammar to cite where and how you used AI and your methods and whatnot, and that they recommend not basically using it for research. There was somebody who reported that I think they had 5 or 6 different submissions, same person for the same grant, attacking it from different angles, and it was clear that they had used AI. So it's here. I say AI, I mean a large language model. It's here. It's something for us to be aware of, and to begin to look at how we're going to deal with that. At NASCIC, we have the Spinal Cord Injury Powered Network, which we're attempting to gather as much information as possible from the most reputable sources, and then to look at that and say, okay, what the community, what do we all agree on? Who are the best in this particular aspect of field in spinal cord injury? And then what do we all agree on? Getting them together and in the room and to come up with a network so that we would have reliable, trusted information that everyone can come to as at least a starting point, a basis. All right, and then let's see, accessibility. So there was a couple of talks about some projects in the Philly area. So this conference, ASCIP was done in Philly. So there was a couple of people in the Pennsylvania area that had really taken on some sidewalk obstructions and the use of technology in order to emote through the city and looking at problems and how to mitigate those. In terms of exoskeletons, we've seen this time and time again that people, you see some great exoskeletons out there and nobody seems to be wanting to use them. And it's not nobody, but it's a very small percentage. There's been companies who've had a difficult time recruiting even for studies. Uh, and so what this basically showed was that there's a lot of different issues with exoskeletons that are, people living with a spinal cord injury would probably say, well, yeah, duh. But the rest of the world doesn't see things the way we see things. The rest of the world oftentimes thinks the most important thing to us is walking. So anything that gets us up and walking is, you know, going to be a breakthrough. And that's just not what's so when you look at the literature about what we say is most important. What's most important to us tends to be bowel, bladder, pain, sexual function, upper arm mobility, hand function, those type of things. Not to say that everything's not important, because it is. And I'm not taking anything away from the people who are working towards having assistive technology that has us walking again. Um, but some of the common things that kept coming up with the exoskeleton home use were like, that it was bulky, that it was difficult to maneuver inside, that it was slow, right? Like if you want to build, honestly, if you want to build a really cool exoskeleton, I say build one that'll do something better than somebody could do who's able-bodied. So like make it run faster than somebody can run, or make it fly, I don't know, like make it do something that it would appeal to everybody, and then you're going to have something. But anyway, I digress. All right, so those were the conference highlights. If you want to learn more, I'll leave this slide up here for a second. You can reach out to Gabby, or again, you can reach out to myself or Ian or Barry or anyone else here at NASCIC, and we'll get you to the right place. Feel free to go on our website and fill out a contact. There's the contact us form you could fill out as well if there's more that you want to, or if there's anything that you heard here that you would like to contribute to. Say, hey, you know what, Jared, you kind of glossed over something pretty critical there. I think we need to really press this in. Good. Thank you. We want to hear that.
So you aren't taking questions now?
Not just yet. Let me just crunch through a few more slides.
Okay.
Thanks, Carl. Okay. So conference observations. Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot of great research centered around quality of life. We noticed that there was a little follow-up on research results with participants. That seems to be something that tends to be a sticking point. And I like to keep hammering this drum to researchers because it builds trust in the community. It builds buy-in. It builds awareness of your research. And it doesn't have to be something that your research turned out to be quote positive, like it was successful in your hypothesis. It could be unsuccessful in your hypothesis. That's also valuable to know. We want to, it's good to report back to people. Our community suffers from survey fatigue. I mean, there's a lot of surveys that come out, and I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to fill out those surveys because it does make a difference. You engaging in research does make a difference. In fact, that's the only way we're going to make a difference if we continue to engage, continue to participate. Some representation of impactful medical devices and pharmaceuticals. Yeah. So just a quick shout out to Onward. Onward has their Arc X device. It was featured on 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper. If you didn't see that, check that out. There's 24 sites that they have available. If you want access to where those sites are, they're in clinics. It's not paid for yet by like you can't go buy one, that kind of thing. But in order to find that information, they request that you go to their website and you put your information in. So they want you to basically register somewhat of your data to them. And then Inuvo, they've all, Inuvo does a great job. They have a transcutaneous spinal stimulator. It's not yet out either on the market, but I got to go to a dinner that one of their participants shared, and people asked lots of questions to him. And it was just really moving to see this young man, Sean, who's in his 20s, and what he's been through, and what it took for him to travel. This was his first time travel, just so he could be present to answer the researchers' questions who are firing questions at him left and right. But to Inuvo's credit, I mean, they're a company that has taken every single piece of advice that we've offered them to make a good product better. And they have continued to ask, they've created a community advisory board of people living with the condition. They've continued to ask for feedback, like how does this affect your skin? Things that people don't necessarily always think about when they're developing a product. Would you use this in your daily life? How often? How much time? Okay, these are things that NASCIC provides to companies. If you're willing to listen, if you're willing to get in communication, we have our engagement services division that heads that up. Jennifer French is the director of our engagement services, and we want to use her up as much as possible while we still have her. All right. And then in terms of pharmaceuticals, NerveGen had a great poster there as well. And it was very impactful. It was showing how, like, with this drug that they have, I think it's called MVG-291, that it's showing regrowth. So one of the issues with some of this regrowth of neurons is they can turn into cancerous cells, right? Your cells have the option of turning one way or the other. So they can metastasize. Basically just means they can metastasize and grow out wildly, right? And so their drug so far is showing where they've been able to keep the controls on the genes to allow for the regrowth of neurons, while at the same time inhibiting the cells from growing out of control. And they've seen some positive results, and even functional improvements. Some might call them minor, but to some of us, we'd call them major. So you can check them out as well online and their news articles. Let's see here. So in terms of what's next in advocacy, we want to continue to attempt to improve clinical trial design, recruitment, retention. This is something that we do here at NASCIC. That was something that was kept coming up at the conferences. Oh, we're having trouble with getting recruitment. It's like, well, yeah, shocker. I haven't gotten a call from you yet. You know what I mean? How many doors do I have to knock on? Do we have to knock on? I mean, like, we're here, so use us. At least make an attempt. Why not? You owe it to yourself. So we do the companies that have used us and have taken all of our suggestions to heart have had success. EG 427 was another one that's had success. So anyway, there's a lot of great stuff in the pipeline here, and we're continuing to beat the drum and build the relationship between people living with the condition and the research community. So last, we have an online course. If you want to try to go it alone, well, whether you want to go it alone or not, I highly recommend taking this course. It's a must course for not just people living with spinal cord injury, but also caregivers, doctors, nurses, researchers, engineers, anyone who's going to be interacting with somebody with a spinal cord injury, ought to take the course. It will give you enough ideas to know where to begin, how to speak to people, what's actually going on. Oh, that you didn't realize. I mean, I learn new stuff every time I peek into this course. So highly recommend that. And then we have, you can find that course if you go to nascic.org, and on the top left of the menu bar, you could go under SCI resources. It'll be there on your left. All right, now, if you want to get engaged in some of the research, so let's say a researcher comes to us and now they want people, to participate in the research, either as a participant or, in terms of help with clinical trial design, and they want to create a community advisory board or something, and you want to be part of that stuff, we need you in our database. Okay, it's all a list based on, like, level of injury, when you were injured, what your, just sort of your demographics. All right. And then when they come to us with some research, we look over our laundry list, or not laundry list, our long list of people, and with their particular demographics are, and we kind of look at that and we go over that with the client or the customer to see who's a good fit for this. And that way we can build and make better research, right? And then you can also, if you have an injury and you want, like, let's say something new comes out that's, for a recruitment for something with the grasp study that we did a while back, recruitment, like if you want something with hand function, and that's something that would interest you, that will be that'll be in the database so that when that research comes up, you'll be notified if you select to be notified. If you get our newsletter, they come out on our newsletters. So we do that every month as well. So be on the lookout for our newsletter. So in order to get registered for our project engagement database, go to nascic.org under Get Involved, and then you'll select Project Engagement Database Application on the left side. Yeah, it's just a little bit about our project review committee, which is made up of 10 people. We're going to be having an opening coming up by the end of this year. And what they do is they review all of this. So when somebody submits an application for research, we look to see if it's actually in alignment with our values of our core principles. So we don't just grab any research from people. We have a whole review process, and there's some things I think would make great research that you don't. Well, we put it in front of a committee and we let them decide. They look it through. These are people who are skilled, who are volunteers, who have given their time and their hard-earned lived experience, and they poured it into this to make our organization run smoothly, but also to make this world of SCI better than when it was for them. A lot of this research won't even impact them, and yet they still look it over with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that it's in alignment. We're proud of what we align to, and if it really doesn't match, then we send that back. Now we let them people make adjustments if they've submitted research, and they can make changes and then resubmit again. But big shout out to the project review committee. We've got some of them here. Look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. Thank you for your service. And then SCIRP. So SCIRP is the Spinal Cord Injury Research Program that was cut by it was part of the congressionally directed medical research program. So the congressionally directed research program, I think, had $1.4 billion a year budgeted for all the programs. There's like 20 some programs or 40 some programs, a lot of programs. And of those programs, I think all, if not most, got cut to some percentage. And then there were several that got cut completely. Well, spinal cord injury got cut completely. And so we're asking you to, if you want to know how you can make a difference today, is to go to the U2FP site and find your representative and reach out to your representative and say, hey, like, we want this program reinstituted. It matters. It makes a difference. A lot of that research went through us, and we would look at the research and write letters of support for that research if we thought it was valuable, go through that project review committee I just spoke to. They would say whether or not they thought that was a good project, something that would add value to our community. And based on that program was running since, I want to say, 2008, 2009, something like that. It's been in existence for quite some time. And all of a sudden, that's $40 million for spinal cord injury just immediately cut. And we all know what happens when the money is not there. Then people get less interested, or maybe they would like to help, but they think that they can't because the money's gone. And so they go into something else instead of spinal cord injury research, which is one of the reasons why it's important that we acknowledge that everybody makes a difference, that everybody's concentration of work makes a difference. Even if we don't necessarily agree with, if it's the quote best use of their time, at least they're putting something in towards us, towards our community. And so, yeah, let's try to make it better. Let's try to widen that scope of what matters the most, sure. And let's make sure that we're acknowledging people along the way who are committed to people living with spinal cord injury. So anyway, you can find that there, and a shout out to Unite to Fight Paralysis for all the work that they continue to do as well. I believe they have a symposium coming up in February of next year. So it's one of the largest symposiums with people with spinal cord injury that actually show up. That was the other thing I noticed about these conferences. We need more people with spinal cord injury showing up, making some noise. All right. And let's see. So they say, you know, when you give a talk, you're supposed to tell people what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Uh, so that's that on this slide. I think it's pretty well dog-eared. All right. So we only got 10 minutes left. I'd like to give a thank you to shout out to all of our sponsors, our current sponsors, the ones who came before them that aren't listed. Thank you as well. These are the ones that made both these conferences possible for us to attend and report back on, and to make and build new connections. And so we just want you to know we really do appreciate everything that you have devoted toward us. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. That was a really well thought out presentation. I know you covered a lot of ground there, so I'd love to open it up to questions. If anyone has questions, please go ahead and use the raise hand function, or just come off mute. Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Onward Arc transcutaneous stimulator is available for purchase. My wife founded a paralysis rehab center, Next Step Raleigh, which is an activity-based rehab center. And we just had a demonstration of the ARC transcutaneous stimulator. It is $44,000. But again, you know, the fundraising and things like that, it seems like it's we're going to try to go ahead and come up with the money to buy one through our fundraisers.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, if I'm not mistaken, a person can't purchase it, but it has to go through like an ABT clinic. Is that right? Or can anyone?
Well, her clinic doesn't use PTs. They just use exercise physiologists. So they're not really a medical clinic, and they are very willing to sell it to our Next Step affiliates.
Great. Thanks. Carl, if you would put your contact information in the chat, that would be great. I would love to follow up with you.
Carl, where are you from? Again?
RTP, North Carolina, Research
Nice.
Triangle Park.
Yeah.
Dignify Therapeutics.
Cool.
Hey, Rob.
Hey. Yeah, I just want to say, like, you know, if this helps gain traction, I mean, in Gusu in Minnesota, we already helped purchase one of those Onward ArcX devices for one of our clinics. There's about 4 or 5 in the state that, you know, are potential, but we kind of budgeted it out, you know, to help these organizations get them. You know, it's the other thing is that there's other stimulators that can do almost what ARC EX is doing. It's just not approved, you know, FDA approved for that use. They're probably not as effective, but they're still getting some results. And there is some published literature on that too.
Great. Thank you. If you have it quickly, I don't know how hard it'd be to find that published literature, but if you have it, you can put it in the chat. Great.
I'll look, but like Ona Bloom would probably be a good. I think she's one of the people that's done some research. I'll double check, but yeah.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes. Chana? Is it Chana? Shana? Not
Oh,
sure.
I'm so sorry. I got unmuted. Apologize.
Problem.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Jared, when you were talking about the exoskeletons, are people actually trying to use those to move around to accomplish something, or are they mostly being used as a exercise therapeutic to get the limbs moving and to get some balance back or anything like that? Or are they being sold to allow you to go to the store?
Yeah, good question. My understanding is that, they are still being used as a therapeutic device, and that's the idea behind all of them. Yeah, absolutely. But it's just that, the VA, you can get one. If you're not in the VA, you got to go through a whole process of rigmarole. But in the VA, boom, if you want one, you get one. And so they have a lot more data about people using them or not using them. And a lot of people aren't using them, even though they got them. And what they've found was that, and I don't quote me on this because I wasn't actually at this particular one. I heard it through someone else. But my understanding was that there was a lot of issues with people actually using it rather than it's collecting dust. And part of that presentation was about, well, what's that about? Well, why is that? And it was that it's, bulky, it's kind of hard on the shoulders. They're not able to use it in their daily lives so much. Yeah.
Seems like it's one of those things that might be best used in a gym facility or a rehab center, rather than everybody buying their own. Come to a center and then have people really get you in that community and have you start using it. Seems like it might be a better approach than just giving them to an individual who has to fight with it themselves and not have any assistance or encouragement.
Yeah, yeah, you brought that. That reminds me that they train when you get one, they train you with a spotter behind you, and so you're supposed to only use it when that person's around, and depending on the exoskeleton. But this was this particular one, and that was another issue people had was having somebody with them so that they felt comfortable, being up and moving around outside the therapy setting. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. The other issue with that would be making sure it fits properly, because a lot of those are custom made.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, another theory shot to pieces.
Well, it's good. We build on it. We build on it, right?
Right, right.
Gives the engineers something to do. All right.
Hey, Jared, I have a quick question.
Shoot.
Um, around what do you think is the barrier to getting people to conferences? So I work at a university, um, within a research institute just for spinal cord injury. And I'm just thinking, ahead of sometimes we get pulled into conferences and I help from an administrative end, but just thinking about what we could provide besides, obviously a barrier is financial and
Yeah, it's a great question. I bet Sasha has a lot he could probably
mm.
say on this. We were discussing a bit about this yesterday. And I know, Sasha, if you want to take that, I'm happy to give you a list as well.
I'll let you do the list myself. I don't want to start on my train right now.
Jared, I can hop in as well.
There you go for it,
And
Ian.
Nancy, great to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
you
joining
too.
us. I think some of the things that are really helpful are just the sheer accessibility of the venue.
Mm.
Depending upon where it's at, and that can be, a whole multitude of lists. It's, the venue itself, whether it's, in a hotel conference center with thick carpet, long hallways, and, a maze of different ramps to get to different parts of the venue, what the bathrooms are like, how heavy are the doors, hotel rooms, how heavy are the doors, how many accessible rooms are available. So, and maybe, having as a conference organizer, being able to block out those rooms, but then on the website say that we have these blocked out for individuals, that need it and kind of, push for that. Making sure that you can access all the areas that are, necessary for participation. And then, where it is geographically located, if it's in a city with good public transportation, since accessible transportation can be a big challenge and then another expense. So there's a lot of different things that, on whole different tiers as far as, and really at the end of the day, it boils down to cost. Even solving some of those accessibility issues is a cost thing, but some of them aren't as expensive as others and can, depending upon, what that return is on that cost, you can see a need. But I think once again, showing what our community does is having someone with lived experience be on that planning committee with you. And that way, they while you're going through everything, they can think of these like red flags that pop up and will help, be able to engage it. And then, certainly I think being able anything you can do to have, discounted conference attendance for individuals with lived experience can give a little bit of a promotion to get people there and things like that. But um, I would certainly suggest just having someone with lived experience be involved.
Can I chime in here, Ian?
Sure.
This is excellent, and I appreciate the question. And I think that's something that I just talked with my director about, which I'd like to share with you all, is this. When you are sponsoring certain venues or meetings and things of this nature, people just simply just write a check and that's it. Now there are certain agencies like Nielsen that have stipulations, and we are starting to adopt a principle here at the University of Kentucky where unless they can meet a minimal standards of accommodations or use the funds that we're providing directly towards making accommodations, then we won't fund people. And that sounds kind of aggressive, but at the same time, it's a very eloquent way of making everybody look introspectively as to whether or not they're actually filling their own mission, if you will. And so I bring this up only because I like the term activists instead of advocates, and we are activists. And I think that the way we do this is present funders or people that are soliciting with just a very simple sheet of minimal requirements about if you want our money, this has to be addressed. They may not be able to, but we will fund them. So it's just an idea.
Yeah, it's great, great, great lines here. I just add two other things, but one is a 5 minute at this conference. They had 5 minute breaks in between. I mean, that's not even enough time for an able-bodied person to use the facilities, depending on what they got going on. So for us, I mean, I think a minimum 15 and a nice solid hour and a half to 2 hour break in the middle to let people get up off their sit bones for a minute, I think that, but to Ian's point, I think, yeah, even a slight discount is better than no discount just because it shows so many of these things just show you care, show that you thought about it and it makes people want to come back. If you're having it in a city, get in touch with maybe the United Spinal Group of that city. Get the people who live there already. Get them to show up and just be present. I think that's something that gets overlooked at these conferences. So why wasn't everybody in Philly in Philly? Why wasn't everybody in New Orleans in New Orleans? So so that too.
Thank you all so much for your time. We will share some of the recording out and have it up on our website here shortly. And also, if you need anything from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email kind of all of us by sending it to info@nascic.org, or find us through carrier pigeon and all sorts of other ways. I'll let Jared close it out, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann. Gaming Readapted is the company. GamingReadapted.com. Anyway, thank you all for being here. And got any suggestions for the future? We do these every quarter. Look to see you. Tell your friends. To everybody let's all show up and let's keep building on what we've created here today.
Thanks, Al.